Hey everybody, HR Heretics segment on toxic managers. So before we get into it, we've had a lot of audience members ping us with questions. We want more of that. And so please ping us your questions or stuff that you want us to cover. You can find me and Kelli really easily on LinkedIn. And so as a reminder, just hit us up. If there's something that's top of mind for you all that you want us to talk about, hit us up. So getting into this week's segment, we have two stories we want to cover, which I will bundle under the umbrella of toxic managers. The first is a Baidu executive who was fired actually from Baidu, who had said some crazy things to her staff, which I'll let Kelli elaborate on in a second. And the second story is around a couple of iBankers, most notably one who was an Army veteran at BofA who committed suicide. This story is actually blowing up on Reddit right now because in the iBanking community, a lot of people are coming out and saying that they've been working 100-hour weeks, that their managers are absolutely insane, that there is no rest. Like these people are working 2 or 3 days in a row without breaks. And unfortunately, suicide is becoming more common in the industry because of the working conditions. So Kelli, what's your take on these stories?
Yeah, I mean, these are obviously, Nolan and I, you were talking earlier, they're very, very intense, right? They're like, maybe they're spikes or very, very sad, very big deal situations that I don't think you see necessarily day to day. I hope not, but I did read about them, especially this woman, Qu Jing, right? The Chinese tech executive, and some of the things she was saying to employees. And some of these things included, quotes like, "I'm not your mother-in-law. I'm not your mom. I only care about your results," right? Someone's child was crying in the background. She kept texting at night and says, "Why should it be my business that your child is crying?" And they believe these were on video. So it's not like these were secondhand statements, right? These are captured on video, and I think she owned those quotes, and just a pretty ruthless leader, right? And I think, if those of you will show the picture here in a minute on YouTube, but some of the tactics here and some of the acts, I've actually never seen something like this in my career, and we have it on YouTube.
So Kelli, describe
right now.
this photo. Describe this photo to listeners who don't have access to video.
Yeah, for sure. So there is something that upset her, right? Basically, local news in China, the Chinese Morning Post, captured these videos of her treating people verbally very poorly. I mean, clearly verbal abuse and harassment, I would say. And she didn't like that. So she cut out a paper, kind of a half of the size of a human doll, and hung it from a coat hanger in the office, literally hanging from the coat hanger, something you'd kind of see in a horror film. And it says SCMP on the body, like the t-shirt, which is the Chinese Morning Post. And above that, there are 4 drawings of 4 knives, and these knives are in red. I mean, this isn't an office. I'm seeing cubes behind it. I mean, I'm seeing literally an office, and I will be honest, Nolan, it did impact me. I paused for a minute, and yeah. my jaw was agape, and I was like, "Oh my God! Like what is happening here?" And mental health came into my head, pressure came into my head. These tweets and whatnot with the analysts, and just that pressure and succumbing to that pressure. And I think it's really sad, and it was really jarring for me.
Yeah. So I'll hit on the iBanking stuff. So this came up in a couple of different channels for me, most notably on Reddit. And there's a couple of threads going on Reddit right now of anonymous iBankers talking about their experiences working in the field. And the things that they're bringing up is like these crazy working conditions to where they're literally not sleeping for days at a time. Their managers are asking for things that are not necessary, but because they're in positions of power, they're leveraging the power, and like it's a power dynamic that has to get done. And they're pushing these people so far to the brink that many of them are just like, not only like exhausted, I think is like the the lightest way to describe it. Like, these are people that are on the brink. And so now people are actually talking about it because this literal like Army veteran committed suicide likely because of these conditions is what people are talking about. So, I think in general, couple of thoughts for me. So as I've gotten older, one of the things that I've realized is that there's a point of diminishing returns for my quality of work. And I think what's happening to me as I've gotten older is that point of diminishing returns has gotten earlier in the day. And so like I try and carve out like my deepest work for the first thing and then putting meetings off till later in the day because I'm not as good at deep work later in the day. I think for managers that are trying to squeeze as much out of these employees as possible, you're not going to get quality. Like, it's just so obvious to say, but it's just like, you're not going to get quality from these people if you're pushing them to the brink constantly. Now, on the other hand, as I was telling you before we started recording, our head of go-to-market last night did this Reddit post that like went super viral, and we had to like go respond to a bunch of people. And that's like, those things come up, and you do need to have all hands on deck. But all hands on deck all the time for knowledge workers, you're just not going to get quality out of people.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors.
Here's a crazy stat. Between hybrid and frontline employees, about 80% don't typically work in an office. So it's no surprise that digitally engaging employees is the number one concern for CEOs as companies go hybrid. But as hybrid is quickly becoming the norm, it's easy for workplaces to start feeling a little less human. Yet delighting a digital workforce is possible, and it can even be, dare we say, fun. That's where Workvivo, Zoom's employee experience platform, comes in. If you've ever recoiled at the thought of a static intranet that looks like something you built in 1995 using MS Paint, have no fear. Workvivo is a dynamic, intuitive, accessible, and mobile-first tool. People actually like using it, which is why companies like Ryanair, Dollar General, Virgin, and more have rolled it out to hundreds of thousands of employees. Workvivo's activity feeds, spaces, shoutouts, and live streams, among other features, help elevate the employee experience like never before. The result? Dramatically better retention, productivity, and most importantly, connectedness. A greater sense of the belonging we all crave at work, whether we sit at a desk or drive a truck. Make Workvivo the digital heart of your organization and achieve limitless human connection. Head to workvivo.com to book a demo and make sure you tell them that Nolan and Kelli from HR Heretics sent you. There's a world where your CRM is powerful, easily configured, and deeply intuitive. Attio makes that a reality. Attio is a radically new CRM built specifically for the new era of companies. It's flexible, easily configures to your unique data structures, works for any go-to-market motion from self-serve to sales-led. Attio automatically enriches your contacts, syncs your emails and calendar, lets you create powerful reports, and quickly build Zapier-style automations. The next era of companies deserves more than a one-size-fits-all CRM with an outdated UX. Join 11 labs, replicate, modal, and more. Try Attio instantly at attio.com. That's ATTIO.com, and tell them Nolan and Kelli from HR Heretics sent you.
You're going to get shit quality out of people. And you're going to burn them out, and they're going to resent you. And I just, when somebody once said you can either lead by love or you can lead by fear. And I think these people that are leading by fear are ultimately going to see poor results. They're going to see very high turnover, especially from their top performers. And I think their customers are going to feel it too.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about in the show this universal kind of theme of trust first, right? Punish last. Don't solve via policy, solve via, right, treating people like adults and doing the right thing. And you said it exactly right, is that these tactics of leading by fear and pressure and just the stick mentality, you see what happens. I mean, at best, people give you half of themselves. They're not committed. They're doing work for a paycheck. At worst, these really bad things are happening, and I would err on the side of abuse. And it just makes me really ill, and it's real. And I know these two things are kind of very intense examples, but I knew someone that I worked with back when I was 24, and they committed suicide. And I won't talk about the details, but I thought this person had it all together. They were a high visible leader, very polished, very intense, very driven. Kind of made me feel bad at times. They were older than me, and they were a little not too nice. And you don't realize what's going on behind the surface with this. So I would say I even have empathy for some of these leaders, like what is happening that's causing this, but it's irrespective. It does not work.
Yeah. I think we've had an era that we're getting out of, to where things got really good, and people, there was a lot of embellishment for how working conditions were really hard. And I think what you saw is this swing back as the macro has changed to be like, no, we need to be more intense and we need to grind more. And now I think we're seeing like it's going in many cases, it's going too far. I'll tell you that I'm in a bunch of founder chats and the overarching theme in the founder chats is that people aren't working hard enough. And I really have been taking a step back and thinking about this, and then also talking to people individually about this. And I think we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, yes, there's a couple of people who aren't working. You should manage those people, and you should manage them out of your organization. But when you conflate amount of time with outputs and results, I don't think it doesn't end up helping anybody. Mm-hmm. Like we should be optimized for good results, especially in the knowledge worker space. Is like, if you have somebody who's absolutely crushing it and it takes them 5 hours a day to do it, like, great. That's an awesome outcome for the business. And I think, with this macro change right now, you're seeing founders use it as an opportunity to get people back in the office, which is a shorthand for like, I want to make sure that you're at your desk for as many hours a day as possible. And I think that's the thing that employees are going to push back on, and they rightly should push back on, because what we should be optimized for is outputs and results. Yeah. And the office thing, which I empathize with too, is a cultural thing. It's not just let me watch you all day. It's, hey, let's find a time, whether it's quarterly or weekly or monthly or daily for some companies, for humans to be in the same space. Certainly.
For camaraderie and all those things, which I agree with. So, and we talked about this earlier with a guest. It's like, it's not one answer. Like, all things are true. Like, yes, some employees take advantage, and yes, they should be called on it. And yes, they're not being productive, but is it to the level that we read in this article with this woman? I mean, that is insane. And so for me, there is an element of nuance. There's an element of judgment, and there is an element of EQ that is just really necessary in leading. Yeah. And a lot of leaders don't have that. They weren't taught that. They weren't expected to have that.
Yeah. And I've said this before on shows, but you definitely learn more from bad managers than you do from good ones. And so if you're somebody who is going through one of these situations right now, all I can tell you is start looking for a new job. Like I've seen so many times, and look, people are growth minded and people do change, certainly, but they often don't change until something serious happens. Mm-hmm. And with managers that have been poor managers, I've noticed they don't really improve until a great employee leaves.
Yeah. And I have been in situations where nothing to the aspect of the two articles we just referenced, right, were situations, but I have been very unhappy, right? Very down, very kind of belittled. And guess what? I was like, suck it up. You should stay in this situation. I mean, it was almost like a bad, you know what I mean? And I think your point is well taken, that you don't have to do that. It doesn't mean that you've failed. It does, and to really just, because it starts eating away at you. Right. And that's not good.
That's where community, I think, really matters, and having your tribe like really matters. And And I think when you think about building that tribe, you're going to want differing perspectives, because I think what we hear a lot of now is the stuff that we really want to hear and we associate with those people, versus like having somebody who's going to say something maybe that like you need to hear, but maybe don't want to hear. And so in that example, Kelli, right, it's clear like you stayed longer, and because your own self-talk was like, I need to push through this. And I would just encourage people to, like, when stuff like this happens to you or when you're experiencing it at work, that you have a diverse set of opinions that you can talk to people about. And also outside of your industry is another angle of diversity that I don't think we talk a lot about. Like, a lot of my friends are like electricians and doing lines work on the power poles outside. And when I come with some of my complaints, they're like, dude, you're soft. Or sometimes they're like, holy shit, man, like that's way more intense than I expected.
Yeah.
And so I think
you playing poker back
diversity
there?
Angles is helpful.
Playing poker back there?
Yeah, I guess
those chips. God. Yes, I agree with all of that. And I'll just second what Nolan said. Like, we get a lot of great requests around spicy segments and things that are uncomfortable to talk about, and keep those coming. I mean, my email is on my LinkedIn. I also check LinkedIn, and we really appreciate it. So
yeah. So hit us up if you guys have any other any questions, any topics that you want us to hit on. And if you're enjoying this content, by the way that you can help is by liking and sharing with your friends. So please keep the feedback coming. We appreciate you all.
thanks all.
HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the things.